Well, welcome to this episode of The Authentic Advisor, which discusses and debates the hot topics impacting business advisors globally. My name's James Mason. It's terrific to be joined today by a long-term Mindship advisor, Peter Lucas from Kestrel Solutions, based in Queensland, Australia, to discuss the secrets to turning around underperforming businesses. So thank you for joining me, Pete.
James, thanks a lot. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, I thought this would be right in your sweet spot. Terrific. You've obviously been part of the Mindshop community for over 20 years now, and I know at various events and during that time we've always had lots of insights we've kicked around on turnarounds, profit improvement, cash flow, insolvency space, which is all in your swim lane. But I guess before we get into all that around the topic and pick your brains, it'd be just good to kick us off with a bit more of about your background and the journey to where you are today.
Right, thanks, James. I sort of fell into insolvency really at the end of my first year at uni. I thought 3 months off I should work for an accounting firm, and the firm I ended up with predominantly did insolvency and a bit of tax and accounting. And I went back there and worked there the last year of uni. They offered me a full-time job. Did a bit of tax and accounting work. To be honest, boring as bat shit. And moved very quickly into the insolvency, which I seemed to be suited to. Moved to Brisbane from Sydney in 1989, worked for Deloitte for a few years, and then another firm before setting up my own practice in 1999. So worked with SMEs, larger companies. And during that journey, I've done a number of informal turnarounds and consulting gigs when I was at Deloitte. And we've done that more and more since I started my own practice. And Kestrel is really focusing on that and moving more into advisory and coaching as well as doing strategy work and profit improvement work. So that's really been the journey.
Yeah, no, and I know, as you said, the insolvency background and some of the technical areas you've obviously seen from that side, but now I know with the heavy focus around the strategy and coaching piece, I guess it's not just going through the technical elements, so you're seeing it from that angle, but also from how do we get on the front foot with the turnaround profit improvement strategy piece?
And you've seen what's gone wrong, and I've probably been involved in the management of businesses, probably about 150, 160 odd businesses over the journey, I'm up here in Blackwater. I've just, with a licensed club that we've just put into a deed of company arrangement, handing back to the directors. Has been a very long journey, but a very successful journey. And we turned the business around and made very good profits, such that we've got a bit of an income tax problem.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
And I think we'll touch and dig deeper into some of those examples in a little bit. But I guess starting at the big picture side of things, it's obviously an interesting market we're in at the moment. What are you seeing as the big challenges at present for business owners and managers, and why is that the case?
Well, I think we've still got the ongoing staffing issue. As much as unemployment's moved up, people are still telling me the inability to get staff. And I think it's quality staff also is a problem. I think we're seeing cash tightening up, particularly in the SME market. The tax officer made it clear they no longer want to be a banker. They expect SMEs to pay their taxes when they fall due. So cash flow issues around that, and that capitalisation of SMEs has always been a challenge. So I see that as being one of the challenges around you're managing your cash flow, managing profitability. How do you get productivity? There's pressure being put about wage rises. How do you get the productivity to offset that? And particularly when you can't just increase your prices. So I see real issues around that productivity and how that impacts on cash flow going forward.
Yeah, and are you seeing a lot of the leaders and owners that you're working with, are they making the tough decisions necessary in the current marketplace, or are you seeing they're sort of sitting back and I guess a bit overwhelmed with all the different options in front of them?
There's a bit being overwhelmed. Some are making the tough decisions. Some are fortunate to be going reasonably well. So there's a mixture at the moment. And I think first half of 2024, when we see the full impact of all the previous rate rises, how that's going to happen, discretionary spending. It'd be very interesting to see the retail figures for December when they come out. See how that, because I'm starting to see retailers coming to me saying they're seeing 20 to 30% drop in sales.
Mm, mm.
Generally the hardest line to fix.
Absolutely, well, and fix quickly as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be part of the challenge, isn't it? It's some of these issues are quite big, and you can't fix them overnight.
No.
But I guess before we get into discussing some of your thoughts on how we turn around these underperforming businesses or businesses with some challenges, what do you tend to see are the early warning signs that a business is in trouble? I mean, obviously some are pretty obvious, but and I guess the second part of that is, what is the root cause in most of those cases?
Well, the early warning signs, I've got a presentation that goes for about an hour about early warning signs. So there's a whole lot of different early warning signs, from poor management, staff morale, presentation of the business, going for the big contract. So there's a whole series. As I said, I've got an hour presentation plus a booklet I've done on early warning signs. But if I look at the root causes, it's really around capitalisation. And I break capitalisation into two aspects: financial capitalisation. No surveys done that I've been able to find, but no one disagrees when I say probably somewhere between 90 and 99% of small business start off undercapitalised. I don't take borrowing your money against your house as being capital, because you're paying interest, you've got to repay it over a certain time. Capital, if you look in the public company, is shareholder funds that don't have to be repaid at a point in time by the company. The other part of capitalisation is what I call a management capitalisation or management skills. My experience over 40 years is that most people are technically good at their trade or profession that have failed if they've stuck to their core professional trade. It's their lack of management skills, their ability to know how to manage people, make decisions around a business and hard decisions, and all those things about how you manage cash flow, understanding profitability and the difference between profit and cash flow. All those things they lack.
Mm-hmm.
And they get very little training along the way. And they think, this is go out, the boss is making money, I can go out and repeat it. So it's really the root cause. And poor management and poor managing decisions, even looking ahead and trying to look across the horizon to see what's coming, what's the trends going forward, and then making decisions.
Mm-hmm. And are you seeing, and some of these might be, hard data-driven warning signs, or some of the softer areas of people just openly talking about them. But I mean, you're hearing when you're going into some of these businesses or getting referred in, what's the typical conversations that other people would be able to pick up and say, hang on, I think there's alarm bells here?
The typical conversations, I just got another $100,000. The bank just give me a bit more money. I like going out to the premises and walking around and seeing it, because I'll pick it up. First thing I'll do is look in the car park. What sort of car is the owner driving? Is it the flash car, or is it modest? Is there a lot of sporting memorabilia around the reception area? How clean is the premises? How well stocked is it if it's a retail business? They're all early and obvious signs. Then you start talking to them about how much do you owe the tax? When was the last time you paid super? What's keeping you awake at night? Those simple questions.
And they're often the simple, as you said, and the things that people overlook. It's actually getting back out there to actually see some of those and get the intuitive feel on things.
Maintenance of equipment and keeping places tidy is some of the things that's easy. And you walk around, particularly if it's during working time, looking at the staff. Are they smiling? Are they working hard? What's the feel, the general vibe you get of the place?
Yeah, because you do pick up on that very quickly, especially when you're out. It doesn't take you very long to be sitting in an organisation and get that intuitive feel, does it?
No. I'll give you an example. I was out doing a review of a regional club for 2 days. I saw one staff member smile in the 2 days.
So and did that correlate to when you lifted up the lid? Did that correlate? Or?
Oh yeah,
it did it
very much. Very much. The first question I asked to start off with a board meeting, the first question I asked gave me exactly. I said, tell me what the vibe place is. Oh, it's dysfunctional was the answer.
Yeah, okay.
They knew there was a problem.
Yeah, and okay, so you can pick up those sort of early cues, but obviously with such a technology, I mean, there just seems to be new bits of technology coming out all the time at the moment. Are you finding there's any tech that's helping identify these things early? I mean, obviously the obvious ones is getting the set of accounts and the like, and seeing some of those sort of more, I guess, lag indicators. But are you seeing anything else that's playing out, or you're recommending to clients?
Main thing I'm doing now, which is probably different from several years ago, is I'm using a lot of the diagnostics.
Oh, the Mindshop diagnostic tools, yeah.
Diagnostic tools. I'm getting the owners to do the burnout or the resilience diagnostic, depending just how I feel from the conversation with them. So which one's the more applicable? The survival diagnostic, profitability one, change success diagnostic. If we're going to turn it around, they got to be ready for change.
Yes.
And we've got to understand where their gaps are there. Because, as much as I'm a turnaround expert, it's the owners of the business that are the ones that are really going to do the turnaround on it, and the senior staff.
So and you're sending those out in advance of a meeting?
Getting them back, correlating them if I'm getting multiple, and then sit down and talk to them.
And do you combine that with the financials as well? Or?
Oh, yes. Combine that with the financials, looking at where that is. We're starting to use a program called Fathom to do a bit of financial analysis around the place. So, and then often there's industry software that's used to produce various reports. Your retailer, you might get some reports out of their point of sale system or whatever. If it's a manufacturer, you might want to get some, contract job reports to see how they're traveling. And you ask the question, do you have a budget? So
that's always a good test. And okay, so you've identified there's an issue. You've run some diagnostics. You look at the financials. You pulled some other, might be benchmarking data and the like, and you've recognised, okay, I think this business has the potential to be turned around. Where do you start with that when you're getting involved to get the success that they're looking for?
One of the things I'm doing is very much just go back to some basics. Now, where, how? Right? Where are we now? And I'll look at it from their customers, their financials, staff, and we might look at staff morale. Sometimes we might do a culture diagnostic as part of the initial things, and we're starting to look at that. Then where do we want to get to? What's survival look like for them? Then we go back and often doing a strategic SWOT to see, is there a plan? We did one last week for a retailer. It's come up with about 17 reasonable strategies to get the business back on track. But then we linked it to financials. And they had to increase their sales by about $250,000 and quickly. Annual increase of $250,000. And they recognised they couldn't do it. So we've gone a different tact. So we start looking at it, get a bit of a plan, then look at the financials. The other part is cash. Just what's the short-term cash flow look like? And where can we stop the bleeding very quickly? So, we do a weekly cash flow for, say, 12 or 13 weeks. What's it look like? Because cash is king. If you can't generate more cash than you're going to spend, how are you going to turn the business around and pay off the old debt? And we've had discussions about, is there an ability to borrow money? Is there an ability to get a capital injection from some source?
So you'd get the owners, leaders. It's almost like a simple strategy session, and having those sort of tough conversations, if you like, up front with armed with that data. Is that a fair summary?
That's what we do. Very much what we do. And we've done some financial analysis on margins and maybe benchmark. And the way I look at it, in some ways, as long as there's some good, strong fundamentals of a business, in some ways, if there's a reasonable amount of problems that need fixing, the better the chances. Because if we can fix this, we can increase your margin, we can do a few things like that, we can get improvement. If I go into a business and it's losing money and it's in really good shape and there's little waste and their margins are right and staff morales are good, you start saying, well, if there's nowhere to improve, how are we going to get the business to become profitable?
Yes.
So in some ways, you need the gap. You need the gaps to be able to fill to get the improvement to do it. So in some ways, we don't necessarily do it in a formal sense of checklist and do a gap analysis, but we're really doing in our minds a gap analysis of where they are now to where we think they can get to in a short
Yes.
time.
And the buy-in that you've got from the senior team there to go
Yeah,
on that journey.
yeah,
And I know you're a big advocate of, from an advisory perspective, to come in after that with things like waste audits as well,
yep.
and to really, I guess, go down that next layer deep to ascertain where they can be. I guess if they have got issues around lack of profitability or inefficiency or they might be overproducing some things, to be able to really shine a light on that. Do you want to just explain a little bit more about how you tackle that approach as well?
One of the things we do often, and sometimes it's often sometimes the starting point, is doing a waste audit and in
Mm-hmm.
doing a workshop, getting the team involved and getting them to identify their problems. And two of the things, or three or four questions I ask as part of the session is, I ask them, what's the frustrations they have with the business? And we keep it away from being personal. So it's not about individuals. What's the frustrations? What frustrations do we have with customers? What
Mm.
frustrations do we think customers have with us? And then ask, what assumptions do we make about the business? What assumptions do we make about customers? What assumptions do we think customers make about us? And that often identifies a lot of areas of waste, because if you cut frustrations out, it's probably cutting out non-value-adding stuff that people are doing.
Mm.
And then
And
once again, you get the buy-in from the staff. They identify the problems. They get to determine the priorities. They get part of the solution.
yes, and so you're just running the standard workshop. Do you do it as a full day session or 2 half days, or how are you
We're
tending
generally
to?
doing two sort of 5 hour days. That way,
Yes.
staff can still get on with some work. And I try to do them consecutive days.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller team, I might do a full day, and then very much sort of get into that implementation and action
And you bundle all that in as I guess, a
package.
single packaged up
Yeah.
engagement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And what's the typical reaction from the leaders once they get into that particular process?
Well, it depends a little bit. Sometimes they're in denial and they're the problem, so they don't really want to implement. So
Yes.
you tend to do it, they're not going to implement. But if they're really serious, you get the buy-in and you get that enthusiasm. And that's why that burnout or resilience diagnostic becomes critically important, because you're
Mm.
knowing where, if they're burnt out, what are we going to do to help them? Because they've got
Yeah.
to drive this. And that might be part of the decision whether you can actually achieve, because if they haven't got the energy to put into it, or if their staff may be very supportive, then that might get over it, because the staff can see that and want to help. So that becomes part of the critical thing about, and that what I've learned also is it's about implementation. We can
Mm.
get a turnaround plan, but if they can't implement it, then it won't.
Yeah. Well, and you're having to then ascertain what's how heavy you have to have an involvement, I guess, to
Yeah,
ensure that boosts the probability of a successful outcome. And I think that's the important point you touched on as well. It's not taking the cookie cutter approach to these turnarounds, because everyone's going to be a bit different depending on the industry, the stage of the business, the
oh,
engagement of the owners, how bad's bad. You've got to, I guess, gather all that data that you're saying up front in advance and use that to shape your approach overall.
very much. They're all different. I had one where the industry regulator was all over them. They got a letter saying if they terminated my appointment, they had to notify the regulator 24 hours. That gave me a real carte blanche to be really hard. I ended up telling 7 of 8 directors they had to resign,
Mm.
because if they didn't resign, they were going to lose their license to operate.
Wow.
Now that business is highly successful, spitting
Yes.
out money left, right, and centre.
So it's making those hard decisions early.
Yeah, and being in a position to be able to do it, um, so that people will listen.
Well, it probably touches on my next question. Does one particular story come to mind? We've sort of touched on a lot of great insights around what it takes to go through the process of turning around a business, but is there one that really sums up some of the key secrets to a 180-degree turnaround, if you had to
Yeah,
summarise two or three key points?
it's one of probably my longer term clients is in the windows, timber windows and doors. Started off, QMI did a review. 6 months later, they came back to me because I was there at the time. And they did use QMI because they got some government
Yeah,
subsidy.
and they're the consulting business in Queensland.
Manufacturing. And then I came back and did a waste audit, and they were blown away by what came out. And then we got implementing, and just after we about to start implementing, I'm doing a full review. I've got the two directors in one of their offices in tears saying this thing was going to fail. They said, "What's our options, Peter?" I said, 3. We could try to do an orderly wind-up. Very difficult. Might get a good result. If you shut the doors now, you're going to lose everything. We roll our sleeves up and get stuck into this. And they got stuck into implementing the waste audit. I did a review. The bank got it. We had reporting to the bank, which meant there was close monitoring. Came out of it. We had to have a plan B. Never needed to go to plan B or plan C. 13 years later, we had some in the construction, ups and downs, but I continued on as an advisor and coach and head kicker at times. They knew
in a nice way.
In a nice, sometimes a blunt way.
Constructive. We'll say a constructive way.
Constructive way when the directors needed to be. They just sold their business, probably got 1.5 times what they should have got for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And really good journey for me. I was still in contact with them. And that was one that was, could have very easily fallen over. Probably along the 13-year journey, probably 2 other conversations when they said, when do you know when to close a business? And we'd have a conversation. And I look at their forward order book and said, if we can manage this, you've got a bright future. Let's get stuck in. And, I probably did 5 or 6 waste audits over the journey. We'd come back and revisit. Sometimes only looking at part of the business, sometimes the full. And we did various other, every couple of years we do a revisit the strategic plan. We did an exit strategy workshop about 4 years ago. 4 years ago. So,
and that constant involvement and evolution and helping again be that constructive contrarian voice.
Yeah,
I guess that helps them not slip back into bad habits and just keeps them accountable.
Yeah, and they'd ring me about all sorts of issues. One time there was a blue between one of the staff and the directors. I get a phone call, an email on the Sunday morning. Tell the guy, don't let this guy come to work. Finds out Monday morning that 4 of the other staff resigned if this guy had come back to work. They get him out and sack him in due course. We referred him off to some HR consultants that had done some other work for them. And so we managed the situation. So I almost become an advisory board of one because of my experience where I'm a sounding board for them. And it was a sounding board between the 2 directors. They knew they could talk confidentially to me about their concerns with the other one. And we'd work out how we would deal with the issue.
Yeah, there's certainly a huge need out there at the moment for that side of things.
Very much so.
Because people are seen to just be overwhelmed with, again, so many options and so much advice. And I think to have that person that can listen first, gather the real data, and then be able to guide and strategize with them is really highly valued.
You got to remember, most business owners are optimists, so therefore the glass is half full. And therefore, they don't always see the risk and how to mitigate. Where you suddenly just ask some right questions. Have you thought of this? What if this? It's not being glass half full or negative, but it's just pointing out some of the risk factors and really, in a way, sort of being in a discussion, putting together a good decision matrix.
Yes.
So they should proceed and how to manage it in going forward.
Okay. So if you had a final tip for other advisors looking to go down deeper into this space and they've got specific clients that they know are in a bit of trouble and they're looking to turn them around. Again, we've had lots of great insights today, but is there one sort of final tip you'd give for advisors seeking to help their clients more?
Couple of tips. Cash is king. So cash flow is the number one factor you focus on. You shouldn't have some knowledge around insolvency laws and definition of insolvency and directors' duties. People can get off
or tap into somebody that knows that,
or tap in that. And I think, getting cash flows done, etc. People don't like doing cash flows, but getting done so you understand. And I think the other thing is also figure out how you're going to get paid. I'm often asking for the money up front, which sounds a bit contrarian in a way. They're in cash flow problems, but I want 20, 30 grand up front. They can find it. They really they can find it.
Yes. Well, you can't, I mean, you're a nice guy, but you can't be offering a charity at the end of the day to...
No, that's right. And you have that discipline then, monthly fee or whatever, and I try to avoid time costs in this stuff. Back my ability to judge what it's going to be, because as soon as you go into a time billing sense in a lot of this stuff, people are wondering, should I talk to him because he's going to bill me? When if they know I've got access, that I find they don't abuse the access. No.
Okay. No. Well, some good final tips there. Well, Pete, fantastic to have you involved today. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and there's lots of practical things I know people will be able to take on board. So again, thanks for being involved today.
Thanks, James. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.